Hello there and welcome to another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. As usual, your hosts today are myself, Mr. Laz Michaelides, and on the screen opposite me, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, bro?
How you doing, man? All good here. And hello, everyone.
What are you up to today? Where are you?
I'm in Islington, London, in a kind of a new drum studio that belongs to a friend of mine, Felipe Drago.
Cool.
So
you're building out today.
Here. Yeah, we did some proper building work here, but no, I'm just waiting for delivery here, and it's very echoey here. Hopefully, the microphone is compensating for that.
It's good. You sound good, man. Yeah, all good. Right, let's crack on then. Today is another album episode, and we are doing the famous Rumours album by the band Fleetwood Mac. And Felipe was the person who chose this album. So, Felipe, do you want to start off by telling us why you chose it? What made you choose this one?
Because I wanted to upset the hardcore rock fans that listen to the show.
What are your initial thoughts of it?
Because listen, when the hardcore rock fans would certainly go for a Peter Green era album, right? So because Fleetwood Mac completely changed from that like bluesy rock vibe into a pop band, really. With this album specifically, I would say, and it's a different lineup, etc. So it's essentially a pop album. That's why I wanted it in the show. So, what kind of pop music can be produced by a rock band? That's why I think it's amazing. And obviously, it's a huge commercial success. It sold 40 million copies worldwide. So it is
10 million in the first month.
And first month, which is insane. So it's still selling. It's an album that you can't ignore. You know, it's not like it's really important for the history of rock and roll. Although it's, as I said, in my opinion, essentially a pop album, a really good one.
I think what I've learned. I mean, let me ask you first. Do you like the album?
I do. I think it's brilliant.
I'm less. I keep saying when we do these albums, you know, I'm always there like, I really enjoyed this album, really enjoyed listening to it. This is the one actually where I've come away, and I just need to say first off, it is a fantastic album, but it hasn't been my favourite. I could easily, there are songs on it that I think are fantastic, but as an album, I could quite easily not listen to it again, but that doesn't detract from how good it is, and we're going to get into how good it is. But I think what you've said is that it is actually a staple, hugely important album in the world of, and in quotation marks, rock and roll, because of what it stood for and what it did. And essentially what it did is that it was almost the transitional album from 70s rock into late 70s early pop, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. And if you think about the grooves and the drum sounds, they are kind of like a clear transition from 70s to 80s, you know, that kind of vibe, that kind of groove that you hear in this album, you would hear, you know, throughout the 80s in every album. So this is probably one of the first albums with that kind of drum sound and that kind of vibe, kind of funky groove. You're
right. There's one sound. It was actually the song Dreams, where the drums, they're so, and this, what's crazy is that so hold on. Before I talk about the drums, let me just give you the quick Laz's info. The album is Rumours. The band is Fleetwood Mac. It was released on the 4th of February 1977, and it was recorded between February and August 1976 across loads of studios in Miami, LA, Berkeley, and Hollywood. It's 39 minutes long. It came in on the Warner Brothers label, and it was produced by Fleetwood Mac, Ken Cadillac, and hold on, that's wrong. That's been an autocorrect. I'll find that name properly.
No, Cadillac, K-Lat, I guess.
That's it, Ken Cadillac, bloody autocorrect, and Richard Bashut. But what I was going to say, so yeah, that's the info of the album. What I was going to say is that on the second song on the album, Dreams, the drums sound so polished and so produced, but for 1977, it's quite odd.
They spent 5 days trying to get the drum sounds at the beginning of the recording process.
So really? They were just tampering with it, finding the best scenario.
The first song was The Chain. It was probably one of the last to be finished. they started with the drum sounds, and the producer, he thought he would get sacked because they think we're clueless. We're spending so much time trying to get the drum sounds right, so they think that we don't know what we're doing. But he had a concept. He had an idea about the drums, and he wanted to work on it, and he took his time.
Yeah,
and it does reflect on the overall quality of the production, doesn't it?
it does. Yeah. Sticking with the first song, Dreams. The whole song just really feels like a. Sorry, I didn't mean the first song, as in it's the first on the album. I mean the first song we're talking about. It does feel just so hugely poppy, doesn't it? You've got the very produced drums, the bass. Again, it's played so well that it sounds like it could have been sort of made on the computer. You've got the Kate Bushy style floaty vocals there. The guitar effects and the production on the guitar is also just so polished. This, to me, is such a huge signifier of the kind of pop music you had to come in the 80s. And they did it in 77.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, because the changes in the music industry, they don't happen they don't happen overnight.
Yeah.
So people are working on concepts and ideas, and those things take over and they become the standard way of producing, the standard way of playing or recording, isn't it? Yeah. So they were probably one of the first bands to look for that kind of vibe and sound. And the vocals are a big part of it. Like, obviously, this incarnation of Fleetwood Mac has nothing to do with the early version of the band. It's a complete different vibe, complete different sound. And I think, as far as I know, making a pop album was totally intentional. They knew what they were doing. And but it didn't come easy. It was like the band was going through like really, really difficult time in their personal lives. Because you got two couples in the band, and
so
both couples going through divorce, and
it's really
breakups.
Interesting because this is just completely reflected in the lyrics, isn't it? You've got Christine and John McVie, who are married, going through a divorce, and Stevie Nicks and Mick Fleetwood were together. That's right, isn't it?
No, not Mick Fleetwood. His drummer was the singer guitar player
Lindsey Buckingham. So Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks were breaking up, and Christine McVie and John McVie were going through a divorce. And you've got this, you and me have been in a band where there's three of us, and we got on really well. But even at the best of times on tour, you need some space. And that's why it's always nice when you get your own hotel room after a gig or something, because you just go back, you unwind, you put whatever you want on TV. If you want to listen to some music, you don't have to ask the other people, oh, is it okay if I listen to this? And you just got your own space. So what I'm trying to say is that even in a functioning band, harmony, space, happiness, general good relationships is a must. So imagine being in a band trying to record an album when 4 out of the 5 members are going through breakups and they're with each other.
Exactly. And how do you communicate? It's really interesting because it sounds like a recipe for disaster. How are you going to put an album together, write new music with people going through that kind of stuff? But that's where art comes from, isn't it? It's from not only good times, but conflicts, bad times, and breakups. So there's a lot of songs about breakups. Actually, the essence of the album is breakup. But here's the thing: I see this album as a collection of songs about breakups, resentment, betrayal. Like love fading away, kind of stuff. On the other hand, there's a bit of hope for a better future as well. The song "Don't Stop" is about that. So it's kind of okay. Shit happens. Let's move on. And there's a few of the songs they reflect. The songwriters' good wishes for the other person. So it's chaotic, in a sentimental way, really chaotic. And you have, I don't think there's hate, but there's resentment for sure. There's disappointment, and it's all in there. And imagine going through all of that and you're singing a song about your ex-partner who is there with you, and they know it's about them.
I watched the so for those who know, there's the classic album series. I don't know who produces it, but they're just a series of shows where they go in depth on the classic albums and they talk to the producer, the band, and all that stuff. And I watched the one for Rumours yesterday, and it was fantastic because they were saying that they just, the two girls, Stevie Nicks and Christine McVie, were staying in one hotel and all the guys were in another hotel. And even in the studio, what was it? Christine McVie was saying there were times where I'd walk into a room and John would be there, and I'd have, before I even sort of finished entering the room, I'd say, hold on, this is uncomfortable. I don't know if I want to be here. Sometimes she went on into the room because maybe she had to record, and other times she left. She said, I can't do this. So it is really staggeringly remarkable to me that an album like this was the result of so much tension within a band. But as you said, you can have, sometimes out of bad stuff comes good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a lot of professionalism there. Like that.
Hugely, you're right. Yeah.
Like we need to produce something. It's still work. Art is still work, and you need to come out with an album. And you're committed to do. And if you're a true artist, you want your art to overcome all the issues, all the relationship matters. Everything there is like not going well shouldn't prevent you from making good art. On the contrary, should be the fuel for your art. And I think they did it in such a fantastic way.
Yeah. Before we go into the songs, I wanted to ask you a question. This is the part that shocked me, because this is obviously Fleetwood Mac's Statement album. I know you've said, actually, let's talk about the lineup quickly, just for those who don't know. You got Lindsey Buckingham, who's lead vocals on most of the songs, and guitars throughout the album. Stevie Nicks was vocals and percussion. Christine McVie was vocals, piano, and organ. John McVie was bass. And Mick Fleetwood was drums, tambourine, all that sort of stuff. So those are your 5 members. And as we said, John and Christine were together, Stevie and Lindsey were together, and Mick was the drummer. Now, this is not the first incarnation, because we know of Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac that came before. Actually, I don't know a lot about it, which is what I'm going to ask you. The shocking thing for me is that this is their 11th studio album. And I can't think of any other band, any famous band, who took them 11 albums to make their masterpiece. And again, we know potentially that this wasn't intended to be their masterpiece. It just happened. But my question to you is, what is this album like in comparison to old Fleetwood Mac? For others like me, who've just heard this album and they don't know previous Fleetwood Mac, what's it like?
Well, you've got to consider the only original member is Mick Fleetwood on drums, right? And it's literally the only link with the original lineup. So I think this incarnation of Fleetwood Mac is just like late Genesis comparing to early Genesis. It's not the same. It's pretty much like the same band name, but not the same band, not the same style. And I don't think they actually wanted to be associated with the past of the band. And Peter Green was an amazing blues musician, essentially, who managed to do that kind of blues rock vibe, who influenced Jimmy Page, and it's like he's got all that. We used to play live, all well, isn't it? And it's got nothing to do with this band. So in those cases, I think it's just for the sake of comparison. When Dio joined Black Sabbath, for me, even by just changing the lead singer, that became a complete different band. And I think it's in this case, it's not pretty much the whole lineup has changed from the beginning. So it's a different band. I usually say to people, if you really like an early incarnation of a band and you love that lineup and you think that's the band you love, and you don't like what happened after with the name, just consider it as another band. It's a different band, like late Pink Floyd comparing to the Syd Barrett era. It's not the same band, really not. You got different musicians, you got different songwriting styles. So I think it's the same with Fleetwood Mac. I think there's at least 2 different bands, and you got to consider this as another project with one member in common.
Musically, how different is it? Is earlier Fleetwood Mac very bluesy and rock and
Yeah,
heavy
very
rock?
bluesy. They used to do it. They used to play some classic blues songs live, and it's, you can hear a bit of Zeppelin, a bit of that kind of early British rock in their vibes. It's just not the same band. That's what I
Yeah.
say. It's not the same, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I wanted to upset the classic rock fans, because this is not classic rock. This is not. Maybe you can even argue that there's not even rock and roll in any sense. But I think what makes uh, this version of the band a rock band is the same thing that happened to Queen. Think about Queen when they became a pop band. Queen is actually interesting because they didn't change the lineup to
No,
change
they
the
didn't.
style.
Yeah,
It's
you're
the
right.
same four guys doing completely different music, and some people hate it. Some people said, "I like Queen until the point they became a pop band." Um, but the thing is, for me, it's equally as brilliant in the sense that you can still manage to produce music and create an album. As I said, the 11th album of a band should be maybe not their masterpiece, because if you like the other, version of the band, you might not like this,
Mm.
but the biggest commercial success, and
Exactly.
that
Yeah,
is
it is
something.
the
That
one they're now
is
known
something.
for.
Yeah, exactly, and that's, yeah, that's the there's a like really iconic album cover that everyone knows. There's so many songs. I got in touch with these songs first when I moved to the UK, started playing gigs, and some songs that are obviously famous here were not famous for me. So I had to learn "Dreams," "Don't Stop," and "The Chain" for one of my first gigs in the UK. I was like, wow, three
No.
songs from this band, and wow, from the same
From the
album.
same album. Yeah,
Yeah, I
exactly.
played the gig. There was a gig in St. Albans, believe it or not.
Oh, wow.
It's a pub gig, and I was playing that. So shout out to the guys at Folding Stars, really cool band I played with. And so three songs from the same album. So I got to listen to this album, and everyone was singing along.
Yeah.
So like everyone likes those songs. They're brilliant. They're brilliant. I think just one more thing about the overall idea of the album. I think the vocal harmonies are part of what make all those songs sing-along songs,
It's
and
beautiful.
parts.
The
Yeah,
harmonies are just
beautiful.
stunning.
Yeah, the producer said in an interview that sometimes was really chaotic, and they would interchange the melodies. Someone would take over someone else's harmony parts, and they would like try different stuff, and they would
Okay.
have like arguments about it. No, you're wrong. This doesn't sound good. And then out of the blue, boom, they would sing perfect harmonies and record in one take, and it
Lovely.
was perfect.
That's lovely. The harmonies is really interesting because I mean we did that with the Van Halen album a few episodes ago, and we were saying that for heavy rock music that was sort of the early stages of your hair metal, you've got these perfect vocal harmonies. But what was interesting with them is it was just the singer who doubled or tripled the harmonies. This, you've got three people, all, like you said, interchanging. Sometimes you've got only the women, only Christine and Stevie. Other times you'd have Lindsay and Stevie. Other times Lindsay and Christine. Other times all three of them. And it's just really interesting because you sat there. Right, yesterday, so on Friday nights, me and my wife, we kind of do some listening. Like, we just pick a band and we just sort of listen to a bunch of songs, get it up on the TV and just watch some videos. And a band called Mastodon, who are a heavy metal band, and they've got three vocalists. The bass player and singer is kind of, he shouts and screams. The guitarist sings, but in a really weird, gruff voice, and the drummer sings in a very smooth voice. And it's so obvious to hear which is which in Mastodon. And we said this as well when we did the band, because you've got three very different vocals, or the band had four, all singing, and you can hear who's who. But with Fleetwood Mac, I'm not going to say at all their voices sound the same, but there was such a unity with all their voices.
Yeah.
You didn't know if it was Stevie or Christine. Even when, Lindsay was singing the higher notes, Christine's, whichever one of the women's got a slightly lower voice. When she was singing lower notes and Lindsay was singing higher notes, there was moments where you're like, hold on, is that Lindsay or is
Yeah.
it Stevie? And they just come together so beautifully, the harmonies, don't they?
Yeah, and why would you give the highest part of harmony to the male singers? It's like they were like
Yeah.
experimenting. I think that's maybe that's what makes this album a rock album, is the fact they were experimenting with stuff all the time.
Yeah.
I would say that's
Point.
the most rock and roll element of the albums. Like it's very experimental for a pop album, for an album with loads of hits. It's
Yeah.
kind of way too experimental for that kind of music, you know.
That was the aim of the album. They said that the aim of the album was, or not the aim, actually, no, they did say that they were trying to make it so that each song could potentially be a single. And I think you have that, don't you? Because
Yeah, they actually released 4 singles: "Go Your Own Way," "Dreams," "Don't Stop," and "You Make Love and Fun." So, but I believe any song in the album could be a single.
and that was the aim, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get into the songs. Do you want to,
Yeah.
any
Well,
particular one you want to start with?
I don't want to. I don't know if I want to talk like song by song, but
No, we don't have to. But if there's any particular aspects you wanted to talk about.
I do. So the one thing I want to say, like to start with, "Secondhand News," the first song, it has kind of an acoustic guitar intro, but it's just the rhythm, and then just kicks off.
Yeah.
And you have right away. I mean, after the first 1-2 lines of vocal, you have the harmonies. Is a very, very strong melody that actually leads the song. The melody is the boss. And you've got, although we talked about like the instruments and the experimentation, all the stuff, but the melody is the boss. And you can tell that from the first song, and it's up tempo, loads of pop vibes, and you have that bittersweet feeling, isn't it?
Got a bit of a country feel as well, don't you think?
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that song, was it Bop by Hanson? No, you know the one.
Oh, that's a connection that I would never think of.
As usual, guys, any song we mention will be in the playlist in the show notes below. But you know me, man. I just hit.
We have Hanson and Fleetwood Mac.
All I have to hear is one bar of guitar, and my ears, they just hear. Oh, that sounds like this, and I just pick them out. You know, but it's quite funny.
I think there's a couple of things about this because there's a kind of, for me, there's a bittersweet kind of feeling because the lyrics are somehow sad, but the melody is happy.
I think it's quite common throughout the album, isn't it? There's quite a few songs which could be. I mean, let's have a look. "Don't Stop." Now that's quite a happy song. It kind of reminds me of. Not literally sounding, just the vibe of it and the happiness. It kind of reminds me of the Beatles and like Getting Better. Just a really happy up tempo song. Don't stop, it's getting better.
That was actually the first song I've heard from this album when I was learning for a gig. But it's just, I think it's the most uplifting song in the album. And I really like their approach to the past. Think about this line, "Yesterday's gone." I love this. I mean, because we all tend to use the past as a source of reflection and a way to prepare for what's coming. And in this song, that is a really, really strong statement. Like, forget about the past. Yesterday's gone.
Is it "Don't stop thinking about tomorrow"?
Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Like, don't even give yourself a chance to think about the past. Yeah. And because they were all struggling emotionally. And think about as a listener at the time when the song came about, and you're like, my life is a bit hard now. What do I do? But it's only hard if you think about yesterday, where you are now. Yeah, it's a different time, a different place. You can do something else. And don't stop thinking about tomorrow is really hard, isn't it? How don't you think about the past? But that's the message. Like, let's have hope in the future and actually don't look back. Just keep looking forward. Keep stay focused and do your thing and be happy. And I think maybe it's a message to themselves. I see this as a rock and roll song, this one, I think. And it's a shuffle. The producer said he struggled a little bit because he never recorded the shuffle. So the shuffle is a swing feel, for those who are not used to the term, which is common in jazz and blues. And loads of rock bands use shuffle feels in songs. And I think it's the only shuffle in the album. I might be mistaken, but I believe it's the only one. And which makes it completely different from the rest of the album in that sense. Is a much more swung kind of vibe, and I love the very first verse. If you wake up and you don't want to smile, if it takes just a little while, open your eyes and look at the day. You will see things in a different way. What a great way to start lyrics for a song! Really beautiful.
Very hopeful, isn't it?
That's it. And I think if you don't want to have a bad day after listening to this album, if you want it to be positive, go back and listen to the song after you finish that. Listen to the song again, and like, this is the one.
It's funny because this seems. I mean, I wrote something down. Let me just find it. This is what I can't. Who said this? I think it was Stevie Nicks who said this in that show I was watching yesterday. She said, "We were writing songs about one another. We were writing journals and diaries about each other." And I think you've got all these songs here, some with some hope, saying, listen, things aren't good now. We're going through some tough times. Love may be gone, but there's always tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Let's move on. And then you've got songs like Go Your Own Way, which is just like, that's just blunt. It's like, it's not philosophical as in, leave the past behind, move on. It's like, you go your own way. Let's do this now.
Know about you.
And you've got these different songs with varying degrees of emotion and pain within them. But like I said, and I'll say it for a third time, some of them are philosophical. Okay, we're having this trouble now, but leave the past behind. Let's move on. And others, which is just like, we're having trouble. Fuck off. Go your own way.
Exactly. So you have all sorts of approaches to breakups in those lyrics. So you have the positive stuff, and you have the can't see your face again kind of stuff.
Go Your Own Way is a great song, isn't it?
Yeah, it is another one. Just one thing about Don't Stop.
Please carry on.
So this maybe we can make a quiz out of this. Can I make a quiz with just one question?
Go for it. Fine. Here we go. Felipe has a quiz.
Which American president has used this song as his theme song for a campaign?
Oh, so he is a president. So he got.
He became. Yeah, he won, and he used the song.
Well, so I got any president between 1977 and now. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Yesterday's gone. Could it be Obama?
No, it was Bill Clinton.
Clinton? Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Was that?
Was there any?
He won. That was in 1992, and when so in 1993, when he became president, they played at his inauguration. They got that lineup back together to play for the first time together in a decade. So, yeah.
That's crazy because it's funny to hear that. I mean, they probably support him, right? Because who was it? I can't remember. One of these.
Sometimes politicians, they just grab a song, say, I'm going to use this, and then musicians get really upset and don't want to. I personally would never like to see a song if I had a hit song. I would never want it to be associated with a politician, because imagine you might support someone and they get there, and after they get there, they start doing things that you don't like dropping bombs in some country.
And your arm is tied.
And I was like, yeah, exactly. And I support that guy. So, but anyway, it's a historic fact, and it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, that's cool. Talking about Go Your Own Way, do you know what was really interesting is that Go Your Own Way is the 5th song on the album, and it is, for me, the first rock song of the album. You got that guitar, the dun 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 dun, loving you, and that's the first time of the album you've got an electric, dirty, heavy rock guitar starting off, which is more closer to the old Fleetwood Mac. And I know we said they're two different things, but interesting, isn't it, that this is the first and potentially only out and out rock song?
Maybe isn't that like the kind of old Fleetwood Mac? Well, obviously because the drums are really big in the song. They're big.
The drums are so much freer compared to Dreams, where, I said, they were quite tight and produced. On this song, they're so free. The fills that go through it are just amazing.
Oh yeah, and Nick was trying to replicate the Rolling Stones kind of vibe, because someone suggested and he couldn't quite make it, and he came up with something else, and that became the groove of the song. And I think it's the most creative drum parts in general in the whole album. And it's a really busy bass line as well.
I was just going to say that. I agree. The same thing you said for the drums, I say for the bass, because, again, just comparing it to the poppier songs like Dreams, what was the other one? You Make Loving Fun. These are very much the pop, heading into that 80s pop era, and then you've got this song with the bass, dun dun, you can go your own way, do 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 do, and just playing all the fills everywhere and melodic bass lines interspersed in between the drum fills and the guitars. This is rock and roll. I love it. This is my favorite song on the album.
I think I've played this song in a wedding, which is quite funny for a wedding. You go your own way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Loving you isn't the right thing to do. That's the first lyric.
Exactly. It wasn't the first dance, at least.
Oh, God, can you imagine?
That would be a disaster. Yeah, but it's it's one of those. I mean, I like the I think the guitar solo is, and here's the thing about the guitar solos. They are, in my opinion, maybe again, I'm contradicting myself now. I'm finding so many elements of rock music every time I start talking about it.
They
the
are
guitar
there,
solos
aren't they?
are very rock and roll, aren't they? The guitar solos are all melodic and dramatic.
They're there. The rock elements are there. They're they're sort of subtly in there, aren't they?
They are, exactly. And I think if you are a rock musician, you can't just kill your rock and rollness.
Yeah,
I'm going to put that
just switch off.
You can't kill your rock and rollness. Yeah, and you have that. I said the dramatic kind of guitar solos are there all the time, distorted and dirty sometimes, and I like that. It does make sure the album has that minimum amount of rock and rollness. And here's another thing about this song was written by Lindsey Buckingham, and Stevie Nicks said that was the hardest song for her to sing live, because he was saying, go your own way kind of stuff, and she didn't really like that.
She didn't him on stage.
Yeah. Well, she said she didn't like. There's a quote from her here saying, "I very, very much resented him telling the world that packing up, shacking up with
shacking up, yeah,
shacking up. Sorry, so packing up, shacking up with different men was all I wanted to do. So packing up, shacking up with different men. So he doesn't say that. So packing up and shacking up are there, and she was like, no, that's not. She said this. He knew it wasn't true. It was just an angry thing that he said. Every time those words would come out on stage, I wanted to go over and kill him."
Well, that's interesting, because what I watched on that on the show yesterday is that, and again, I feel I was quite tired yesterday, so I didn't take it all in. So that's why I was confused between Mick and Lindsey. But I think Lindsey said that Stevie Nicks was having an affair with his best friend.
Oh, right.
And that seems to be the basis for what he wrote this song on. And from what you've just said about what Stevie Nicks said, if she says it's not true, I mean, only her, Lindsey.
Well, the thing is, I don't think she's denying she was seeing people, but she was like, I'm not just doing this out of fun. I'm looking for something. So
Good point.
I think what she says, like, it's not fair to just criticize someone like that. And when you make it in form of music, and are you singing with the person by your side? It's like isn't it?
And if Stevie was right, and actually she wasn't just having affairs for the sake of it, and she was in love with this other person, then you can't
sing about it.
You can't say to Lindsey though, listen, Lindsey, change the lyrics, please, because you're wrong. It's like the lyrics are stuck.
Because the fans, they loved it, and I think that's the beauty of music. Once you write a song and put it out, it becomes something else for the listener.
Yeah.
For a rock fan or Fleetwood Mac fans, like, what a great song! I just want to sing along and have a good time.
Yeah.
And that's what I think about. That's why I think the melodies and the vocal harmonies are probably the main thing about the album, because they make every kind of painful lyrics sound uplifting in a certain way.
But at the same time, you've got to think, I mean, I was listening to an album the other day by a band called Korn, and the album was called The Nothing, and he wrote the whole album, Jonathan Davis, on the back of his mother and ex-wife dying within 6 months, I think. And he said that he wrote the album in such pain. And he said, you know what, my musical expression, he went into the studio, had a breakdown, hit record, and the end of the album is just him sobbing and weeping, and it's quite dark and scary. But my point is that since that moment, the Korn I've been listening to, I haven't really heard, or can't think that I've heard, an album where it must be so emotional for the person performing to get their art onto a record. And I know it doesn't sound like that makes sense. He went into the studio and did his crying because that was his outlet.
Yeah.
But these guys, they're singing about each other whilst recording. That must be really hard emotionally.
Yeah, and it's. I imagine that one of the reasons why you write songs is because you need to kind of get rid of those feelings. You just need to put them out. And the problem is when an artist does that, you will never ever forget that feeling because it's recorded and it's out there for everyone just to listen to. And I think isn't it why we listen to music as well? We want emotion. We want and that's a big thing about rock music because loads of what is produced nowadays. Without being specific about anyone, but there's loads of bands and artists that they doing commercial music, really well done, really well played, well sung, but intentionally commercial with nothing else. There's no layers, there's no real feelings. Just like I'm just going to sing. I'm not saying that this only happens nowadays. It always happened, throughout the history of music.
There's been music for the sake of music sometimes.
Yeah. It's like I want to do something commercial. I want to do something that's going to sell millions of copies, and I'm going to sing someone else's lyrics. Their producer wrote for me, and I have no emotional connection to that. There's loads of people doing that. And what is brilliant about this album, can you make a huge commercial success with sing-along songs about feelings that are actually real? And this is brilliant.
Talking about you mentioned we started about Go Your Own Way, and you said how hard it must have been and how hard they found it to perform live. Another one like that is from this show I watched yesterday is the track number 6, which is Songbird, which is just Christine McVie sitting at the piano and playing and singing this song. And John McVie said that, listen, I never told Christine, but I used to be at the side of the stage. The band used to clear off. She used to play the song on the piano. He said I used to stand at the side of the stage and just bawl my eyes out every night. And that's a beautiful song, that one. It's got a real kind of 70s singer-songwriter feel about it. It really reminds me of the song Tapestry by Carole King, Jackson Brownie as well. So again, I'll chuck a couple of songs in the playlist for you guys to hear. That's a lovely song as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's... I don't think they got it wrong in any part of the album, really. Like with kind of arranging and getting to a final product, because that's the thing, though. Even let's say you think one of the songs in this album is not like, oh, that's not great, or it's not the best lyrics or not the best melody, but then is where production plays a really big role, because everything in the album is extremely well produced, in my opinion.
You're right.
And it's hats off to the whole production, like to everyone who was involved with production, because it's not that easy to get a perfect sound in every single song of an album, and that's a big big thing. And I thought what I said at the beginning, it's very experimental, which makes things a lot harder.
But it is damn near perfect, isn't it? I mean, the sound of the album is incredible.
Yeah, just one thing about I want to say something about the production, like the song "Dreams." They've managed to capture the feeling, like in such a way, and everyone knows those vocals, that the tone of that voice, the softness of that voice, and probably Stevie Nicks' most brilliant moment, maybe in her career, singing that song. There's an interesting story about it. She used to be quite bored with people doing the technical stuff. She wasn't into it, like when people like trying sounds and changing cables, whatever. And then she was like, you know what, I'm gonna go find a piano to play. And they had Sly Stone had a studio there, or they had a room. The label had a room there in the studio for him. And as he wasn't there, she went to play piano or a Rhodes or some sort of keyboard, and she just went and started playing. And then she walked into the room and said, listen, I've just written this song and I think it's really good. And it's like, right, so let's do it then. And then she recorded the guide vocal whilst playing the Rhodes. And the band was playing together, whatever.
Wow.
And the guide vocal is the vocal you have in the song, because she
Really?
couldn't match that performance.
Wow.
And the producer was like, oh my God, I wanted to do a better version of this, because there's a bit of drums coming into the microphone. You know, when you're recording a guide track with everyone played together, it gets a bit messy, and then you need to record one instrument at a time. So he wanted just the vocals, like, to be a clean take. Sometimes she was singing like really, really soft, and the producer wanted like just like clear vocals in one vocal take, just vocals.
But she couldn't match it.
She couldn't match that initial guide vocal performance. And it's beautiful. It's so cool to know that that's what's in the album. Maybe someone's first interpretation of their own music. How cool is that?
Well, it's good because it's raw, isn't it? It's emotional. You get the first, the way they want. Because any artist, you know, I think they'll always know how they want it to sound from the start, and to get that as down as a guide vocal, you know, but songs can change. You and me both know, we've been in the studio plenty of times through our lives, that you come with an idea and then there's changes, whether it be a riff, a melody, a song, you know, cut this verse out, do that, do this instead. But she got what she wanted from the original down onto the guide vocals. They didn't change anything about the song, and she couldn't replicate it because it was just so good, which is great, isn't it? That's another kind of experimental thing, you know, like using the guide vocals.
Yeah, using guide vocals as the final take. But imagine you need to have that perception of what is a good performance.
Yeah,
I wouldn't think any modern producer or record label would accept guide vocals as final vocals for
not these days, would they?
Yeah, because that's the aim for perfection. And again, okay, here's me contradicting myself again. Isn't this really rock and roll? The fact that you allow imperfections to be part of an album.
Do you know what? There is a part I have written. Here we go. Track 9, I Don't Want to Know.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just me? You tell me as a drummer. I feel like he is speeding up. He speeds up quite a bit during the song.
Oh.
It's probably something for you to have a listen to after it. But even if he doesn't speed up, it feels like he does. Because I feel like I'm good. I don't want to know. And then the next verse is, I don't want to know. Not double time, but it just feels like it slowly edges up, like by a BPM or two. Every BPM, for those who don't know, is a beat per minute. So it just gets faster and faster. And I've written here, imperfections are the best. Drums speeding up. So even if he doesn't speed, even if by the grid it's perfect, it sounds like he's speeding up, and I love it because
it probably is. I'm going to have a listen again, but it probably is because it's an up-tempo song, isn't it?
Yeah,
kind of, and it's really, really easy to speed up if you're not playing to a click track, which I doubt they would, because I think that wasn't a thing in the late 70s. People were not recording to click tracks.
But it's funny because the difference between what I just said, the potential imperfections of I Don't Want to Know, and the literal perfections of Dreams, where the drums are just so tight, and it doesn't feel like they ever wander off the path on Dreams, whereas I Don't Want to Know, again, they could not be sped up. I just thought it was, and I loved it.
Well, if you have that, if you've got that feeling by listening to it, there's some element of it, isn't it? That it's got to be. There's always
it might just
there's
be
always imperfection.
It might just be Stevie Nicks on the tambourine. Maybe she's like just doing a little too fast or something. Who knows? But it just sounds great. Talking of the experimental side of the production, the last 2 tracks of the album are quite interesting because there's a lot of experimental stuff happening. I mean, the final track 11, Gold Dust Woman, it's only when I was watching this show yesterday, and what they do on this show is fantastic because they get the original producer and they get him on his 25-track mixing desk, and he pulls things in and out. He goes, right, we're going to take everything out, and he goes, listen here, we've got a harpsichord. For those who don't know, it's an old style piano where the strings, so for those who don't know what a piano, when you hit down the key, a key inside the piano pushes down on a string and you get the noise. With a harpsichord, the string is plucked. And it's very famous, the harpsichord, for being in Baroque music. I'll put a piece of Johann Sebastian Bach in the playlist so you can hear how a harpsichord sounds. You've got a Fender Rhodes, which is one of these new kind of synths that were coming out in those times. And you've got all of these instruments building layer upon layer. And he's pushing up all these instruments, and you can't really identify them individually, the track, because it's been mixed so well. But yet, very experimental techniques here. I mean, I know the Beatles were doing it 10 years earlier, putting the sitar into pop music of that time. But again, you know, we've got an album that has its roots in rock, country, folk, and together it's kind of becoming this pop music, but using classical harpsichord and an Indian dobro.
Check it out. Dobro, I think, is a kind of acoustic guitar. Not quite sure. Because have a look. It's cool. We do it on the spot here. We don't. If you're not sure about something, check it out.
You're right. Yes, it's like a steel.
It's a steel guitar. Yeah, isn't it?
It is. Yeah,
it's the one that people usually play with is light.
You're right. Yes, I don't know why I thought it was an Indian instrument. Maybe I've got that mixed up. But yes, it's like a steel guitar, and you hear the slight sound over it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. Yeah. So those. Yeah. So. Which is not, I mean, all rock musicians who have folk and country influences, they might use the dobro for some stuff, but it's still not that common in rock music. Again, that's being experimental.
But the thing is it's the context, because there are a few tracks here which I thought had a southern rock vibe to it. Which ones did I do? The Chain, to an extent, at some point. Oh Daddy, I think that was it. Track 10, Oh Daddy, had this kind of southern rock, grimy, you know, where you'd expect to hear the dobro, but didn't hear it very much in the. The Gold Dust Woman does have that southern vibe, and I wonder if that's what dobro brings to it.
Yeah,
again, just experimental instruments, experimental sounds, and fantastic production.
And it's quite different. In terms of songwriting and even the arrangement, this is slightly different from the other stuff. But the album has a unit in terms of the overall sound. That's what I'm saying. The production does the job. There's an interesting, just a curiosity about the experimentalism in studio. The song "Never Going Back Again." The producer asked the guitar techs to restring the guitar every 20 minutes. So they were doing different things. He said, I wanted to get the best sound on every note of his picking parts. So when he was playing the guitar, he wanted like a really clean neo guitar string vibe for the song. So
you can hear it though.
Every time they do the take, they restringing the guitar, and the guitar techs wanted to kill the producer, as I imagine. Oh yeah, just change the strings again. We're going to do another take. This is
that's attention to detail, isn't it? Like
it is. And you think about one more thing. What they did with the Chain is like we trying to find the perfect song, trying to come up with this really, really masterpiece of this kind of amazing, complex piece of music. But it took them 9 months to finish the song. It was the first song they started working on, and then it took them all the way to the end of the recording process to actually do the song the way they wanted. Right. And they were rearranging parts all the time. And again, this is the rock and rollers coming up again. They were coming up with loads of stuff on the spot. It sounds like a lot of this album was written in studio with them jamming together, coming up with ideas, trying things out, recording, re-recording. Yeah. And one of the reasons that the song is called The Chain is because they were connecting parts that were written separately. That's one of the reasons. Clever. And some people claim that The Chain is about the fact that there was still something connecting those people through a time of crisis, of personal crisis, and the chain is that feeling that connects. Yeah, literally connecting them all and keeping them together in order to keep producing music and playing music. So it's a really, really strong. There's loads of layers of meanings to that, and it's a really, really strong song. And that bass line that happened at the very end of the song, when you have a complete different part, double tempo part, with the bass leading the song, that bass riff again was written on the spot.
Oh, really?
So yeah, John McVie was playing, and he just played that riff, and they said, "Oh, that's it. Shall I use that?" Yeah, it's like iconic. And every bass player should know that,
And how many, again, just a quick, nothing you don't have to answer, it's kind of rhetorical, but how many most famous riffs of all time are on a bass compared to a guitar? Not many.
Oh yeah, not many, and this is one of them. Yeah,
iconic,
the
isn't
bass
it?
leads, and I think that's again a very cool way of doing something, because you could have just transferred that riff to the piano or guitar, say, oh well, yeah, oh nice riff you came up with, let's do this on the piano. And it's, oh no, that's a bass riff. That's the kind of bassist kind of vibe and approach.
Written
and
for the bass.
The tone of the bass is perfect. The levels of the bass on the mix are perfect, and his performance is just perfect as well. So it deserves to be iconic. It deserves to be.
You mentioned before Never Going Back Again. I think that's my favourite song on the album. I think it's lovely. It really reminds me, it's very folky, very acoustic. It reminds me of Bron Year by Led Zepp and Going to California by Led Zepp as well. Just the lovely stripped back vocals, guitar, very simple, and it's really nice. The other thing, it's not the last time I'm going to mention Led Zeppelin, because track 8, You Make Loving Fun. That synth bass that's there really reminds me of Trampled Underfoot by Led Zepp off Synth Treaty. But that's because they're using the same kind of synth bass. So I'll put that song in the playlist and you have a little listen. And that song, You Make Loving Fun, again, you got hints of 80s funk creeping in there.
There's loads of it. There's
styles littered across this album, isn't there? Just little hints. Not like one song is a funk song, one song's a country song. Just little hints from their previous 10 albums. Not saying any of their 10 albums were funky, but they've taken everything they've learnt from previous, potentially. I know it's not all the same band members, but you're just hearing subtle little directions in this album of different styles, different influences, different inspirations, and make overall a pop album. But isn't that funny? Because pop means popular.
Popular, yeah.
They've taken the most popular aspects from funk, the synth, most popular aspects from folk, the acoustic guitar, and they've made it poppy. I mean,
it's a pop song, and there's a 80s funk vibe, as you said. And there's a couple of curiosities about the recording of this song. The clavinet it's connected to a wah-wah pedal. So it's a guitar pedal, and you need to step. Obviously, if you know what wah-wah pedal, you need to step on the pedal with the rhythm you want for the riff, and it's going to kind of change the sound. And so it's a keyboard connected to a guitar pedal. And the interesting thing is, Christine couldn't play the keyboard part and play the pedal at the same time. She found it really hard to do. So Mick went there with his he went down on his knees and was pressing the pedal whilst she was playing. And it's how cool is that you have the drummer there like pressing the pedal with his hand and the keyboard player doing the riff and going. It's just because they wanted a particular sound, and with the technology at the time, you need to figure out how you're going to get that sound. So guitar pedal plus clavinet. That's
great. It's another. Sorry, go on.
One more thing about this song. The drum fills were played by Lindsey Buckingham.
Who?
By Lindsey Buckingham.
Oh, really?
Not by Mick, because he didn't. I think he didn't agree with the ideas that Lindsey had for the fills. I wanted to play some accents on the toms like this, and he was like, he either couldn't make or couldn't find that sound, or he didn't like the idea. And so Lindsey went there himself and played the tom fill. So I think there's overdubs of the drum fills on top of the groove. So that's it. You go and do, you do whatever is necessary in order to reach the sound you want.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place. I think we've covered it all there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do my little monologue now, and then I'd like you to sort of respond to what I say and tell me your thoughts on it. Because it's the first time, like I said, I'm not ashamed to admit it, that I'm not crazy about this album, but there's a lot of interesting stuff about it. So I'll just do my thing now. So my thoughts on the album. I thought it was an okay album, but I certainly don't think it is among the best albums ever written. But nonetheless, it is a really interesting album, really well made, and very pleasant in some places to listen to. It certainly feels like a transitional album from 70s rock and roll into 80s pop. You've got the vocal harmonies, your synths and the keyboards, mixed with the guitar riffs and the rock rhythm sections, as well as the tiny hints of folk, funk, country, and southern rock. Each song, you can tell, has just been carefully thought out and intricately written, with the idea that each song could be a single. But this is where I feel personally that it is a little disjointed, and the band have actually said this album is disjointed. For me, the songs don't gel or flow from one into the other, and it doesn't entirely feel connected. And I think for me, that sums up not just the album, but a bigger picture, which is that the relationships and place that this band were in at this stage, emotionally all over the place, four members breaking up and divorcing with each other. You know, they couldn't even live together or be in the same room in the studio. And the band have actually said that this was, and this is a quote, a tremendous emotional sacrifice for all of us. And I think that it is a testament to the excellent musicianship, the brilliant songwriting, and the talent of this band that they were able to make such a great, well-renowned album during such a miserable time of their lives. But as we said at the start, maybe that was the key to creating this great piece of art.
Well said, bro. All of this. I mean, I couldn't have said it better.
One difference is that you like the album, and I mean, listen, exactly, I think it's really good. And there's places.
You don't necessarily need to.
Go on.
No, you don't necessarily need to be a big fan of an album or a band to appreciate how good it is.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Just because I'm not going to listen to this again. Well, I'm sure I will one day. And like I said, Go Your Own Way. Fantastic. I would put that on. And actually, there's a few songs I would say, oh, do you know what? I fancy listening to Never Going Back Again today. Or I fancy listening to The Chain. I don't feel like I'll ever say, oh, I want to listen to the whole of Rumours today. And that's what I mean by I feel it was a little disconnected. But again, that does not take away from the fantastic achievement that they've put out. It is a great album.
There's an interesting thing that when you said the album's just disjointed, I think the last thing I want to say about this is like, how can that kind of chaotic collection of songs become an album? And where is the connection between it? How can you call that one piece? And I think it's because of the chain, right? It's because of that feeling. There's this.
Hold on, sorry. Do you mean the song "The Chain" or the metaphor "The Chain"?
Both.
Oh, okay, all right. Go on. Sorry, go on. Explain.
The chain is what keeps it together, right? So exactly how the song says. So what makes that collection of songs an album for me is the chain, which is the feeling of the feeling behind the songwriting, which is pain, breakups, wanting to move forward. All those songs have that in common, although the arrangements are not the same, the vibes and the songwriters are not the same. But what connect the change that connects the album for me is the fact that you have artists willing to produce art regardless of how much they suffer in their personal lives.
Yeah.
And so that chain, that willingness to produce something is part of the chain that keeps the band together, plus their creativity kept them together, plus their musical abilities, plus the capacity of working, the ability of working together regardless of any external issues.
That must have been it must have taken such a huge toll on their mental health, their mental well-being, to be in a place where they were not comfortable for weeks. When did they record this? February through to August. That's a couple of months, 6 months-ish, of being in a place where you're not comfortable.
Yeah, and I think about the fact that, again, the chain was the first thing they started doing, but they didn't quite finish, and they kept doing. So I think it's that feeling of kind of unfinished business that you try to get your own pieces together emotionally, but you're doing stuff. And I think it does send a really interesting message. We talk a lot about mental health and stuff. it's really, really, really hard to produce something. It's really hard to work. It's really hard to do whatever you need to do when you're going through a difficult period of your life and going through like some sort of mental crisis or any mental health issues. But it's still possible.
And if you
That's the proof.
And if you find the will and the strength to push through, you can find, as this album shows, incredible results on the other side.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Brilliant. Are we getting
Fantastic.
more philosophical as we
I know. We always do, don't we? But I think this is a good place to leave it. I mean, like we said, I don't think we were ever going to go in depth about the musical aspects of the songs. It's just this album, it's the content and the lyrics and the thematical and the themes of the album that is what matters. Because in the end, they have created a diamond from a very miserable place. And it's like I said in my little thing, it's a testament to them, their talents, their songwriting that they've done this. So any final thoughts, bro, or should we wrap it up?
The same. Listen to the album. And you, Laz, listen to this album in 2 years, baby.
Oh, do you know, this is what I'm saying, man. It's interesting. There's nothing bad on it. It's just like I said, I don't need to say it again. Just it doesn't always connect for me. But the songs individually, they all could be singles, and they are all fantastically written. They've taken so much time to make sure that everything that needed to be there was there. And the thing that tops it all off is the production. It just sounds fantastic. And because of the production, as well as the songwriting, you've now essentially, I'm not going to thank this album. I'm not going to say this album's responsible for 80s pop, but it had to have had an influence because...
Oh, yeah, for sure. It did influence everyone who came after it. And just one thing then, where you said the production is really good. It's the two things that keep the album together are the two most. I think they're the two ends of the artistic process: is the feeling behind the songwriting and the production. So you have the most emotional aspect of creating music and the most technical aspect of creating music, which is the production. So those two things, they kind of kept the band together and the music together. So
that's a fantastic point, man. Excellent. Well, guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it. As usual, don't need to tell you where to find us anymore. Felipe, tell us where they can find them.
You can find us on the internet.
There we go. So thank you very much. As usual, playlist will be at the bottom of the show notes. It'll have the whole album in, plus any other songs we've mentioned. Have a great week, guys, and we'll catch you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, guys, have a good time. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep on rocking, everyone.
And finally, take care, everyone, and long live rock and roll.